The new law school employment data just came out this morning. Every law school in the country had to disclose how many of their class of 2025 graduates got a real legal job. I spent the morning reading every number, and I'm going to show you 6 things the American Bar Association is not going to mention in their press release. There's one school where a fifth of the class ended up unemployed, another school where real hiring dropped, but the headline rate went up, and I'm going to show you exactly how that trick works. There are 4 elite schools quietly paying their own graduates to inflate their rankings, and 2 top 14 law schools whose class sizes just collapsed by more than 30%. And by the time the press release drops in a couple of days, half the internet's going to be repeating a number that doesn't mean what they think it means. But you're going to know better. Let's get into it. Now, here is the number you're going to hear about 100 times this week: 87.7%. That is the share of class of 2025 law school graduates who landed a full-time long-term job that requires the JD. Last year, it was 87.1%. So you'd think it was up 0.6 of a point. Sounds like things are doing better, but they're not. Look at the actual numbers. Legal jobs this year dropped by 2,200, 6.5% fewer real jobs than last year. Graduates dropped by 2,700, 7% fewer people. Fewer people got hired, that is a fact. The rate only went up because class sizes shrunk faster than the hiring fell. That's what a decline looks like when you do the math backwards. And unemployment actually got worse. 4.65% of graduates were unemployed and seeking work last year, 4.93% this year. So even with 3,000 fewer graduates chasing jobs, unemployment still rose. If hiring had just held flat, the rate would have dropped. But it didn't because hiring slipped. But the press release this week is going to say 87.7. Reuters is going to run it. Every dean's going to email it out. But you're going to know what it's really hiding. Which brings me to the school at the center of this whole story. And I promise you, nobody else is covering what I'm going to show you now. Howard University School of Law in Washington, D.C., founded in 1869. This is the law school Thurgood Marshall graduated from in 1933. For Black students in this country, Howard Law is the law school. Generations of civil rights lawyers came out of that building. Last year at Howard, they had 147 graduates. 119 got full-time, long-term, bar-required jobs. Overall employment rate, 85%. Only 9 graduates unemployed and seeking employment. Those are pretty solid numbers. But this year, with 155 graduates, only 106 got full-time, long-term bar-required jobs. So the overall rate dropped to 70%. 33 graduates unemployed, still looking for work. 33 is a 15-point collapse in 1 year at Howard. 1 in 5 of their recent graduates cannot find a legal job right now. And this is not a small school, it's Howard. The class actually grew slightly, which means you can't write it off as a bad sample. These are real people with real student loans and no job offer. Now, tuition Howard Law runs about $40,000 a year. 3 years of that plus living in DC, you're looking at about $180,000 to finish the degree. 33 graduates from the class of 2025 paid that, walked the stage, but they're at home right now refreshing their LinkedIns. I don't know exactly what broke at Howard this year. Could be a bar passage issue, could be federal hiring freezes in DC, could be the DEI rollback hitting public interest placements, probably a mix of the above. I'll do a full dedicated video on this when I know more. But everyone watching this right now needs to know that if it can happen at Howard, it could happen anywhere. Your safety school isn't necessarily safe. You want to read the data at every school every single year before you sign anything. Now, Howard isn't even the only school where the floor fell out this year. There are 4 more that I'm going to cover. I haven't heard anybody else covering this, but I found it in the data, so I'm going to share what I saw. I ran the numbers on every law school in the country with 100 or more graduates. 5 of them dropped more than 8 points on the headline rate in a single year. Howard, you already know. Here are the other 4. First, you've got number 1, Western New England University School of Law, 77% to 60%, 17 points gone in 1 year. Biggest single year rate collapse in the country. And while the rate fell, the class was shrinking down 24%, a smaller school with worse outcomes at the same time. That is a school in deep trouble. They're still recruiting for fall of 2026. Number 2, Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico. Their headline rate dropped from 39% to 24%, 14 point. Their bar required full-time long-term rate alone is 17%, lowest legal employment rate of any ABA accredited law school in the US. Their unemployment rate is 29%. And while the rate was collapsing, the school expanded its class by 30%. They enrolled 30% more students into the worst legal outcomes in American legal education. I searched all over for coverage, couldn't find a single article about this. Number 3, University of New Hampshire School of Law, 83% to 70%, 13-point drop. They've got a pretty respectable regional reputation, known for intellectual property law, gone in a year. Number 4, University of Toledo College of Law, 82% to 70%, 12-point drop. The class also shrunk 25%. Same pattern as Western New England, contracting school, meaning they're shrinking. They've got worse and worse outcomes over time. Those are 5 schools in the past 12 months. Again, they're Howard, Western New England, Pontifical Catholic, New Hampshire, Toledo. I'm going to bet the ABA press release this week is not going to name a single one of them. Every one of these schools will spend the next 12 months recruiting you for your seat deposit. If any of them are on your list, pull up the individual ABA disclosure before you sign anything. Now, I want to update you on 4 schools I covered on this channel the other day. I recently ran a series covering 509 reports. I talked about Cooley School of Law. I said they were running a volume play, enroll everybody, take the tuition, let the outcomes sort themselves out. And I was right, they actually doubled down. Class of 2024, 124 graduates. Class of 2025, 143. They expanded 15% in a year. Their employment rate is flat at 67%. So they're admitting more students into the same mediocre outcomes. That's the entire business model. Toledo University, this one actually kind of surprised me. Their headline rate looks stable, 81 to 79%. You'd think that was pretty good. But their unemployment rate almost tripled. 2.7% of the class of 2024 was unemployed and seeking, 7.6% in the class of 2025, same school, same class size, 3 times the unemployment. Something broke at Toro under the hood, and the headline rate hides it. If you're looking at Toro and your admissions counselor quotes last year's rate, ask them why unemployment tripled and watch what they say. Then you've got California Western School of Law, and this one actually improved, 73% up to 76%, 3-point gain, credit where credit's due. But their unemployment rate is still 14.6%. 1 in 7 of their graduates cannot find a job, and this is their better year. So if they're calling you, asking you for the seat deposit, if they're offering you scholarship money, ask them about that 14.6%, not the discount. Then there's Vermont School of Law. When I covered them the other day, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. They've been restructuring. I wanted to see if it was going to work. It didn't. Their headline rate dropped from 78% to 76%. Their class shrunk from 146 to 130. Both of those are in the wrong direction. They're still decent if you want to practice environmental law. They own that niche, but for general legal employment, it's not worth the investment. Out of all those 4 schools, none of them improved enough to justify the tuition. Now, if you're wondering if I've been too harsh on them, I mean, the data kind of tells the story, right? Now, I want to talk through what the top of the market is doing, the T14, because in some ways what they're doing is actually worse and more sketchy than the bottom of the market. Let's talk about Yale and Cornell. There's a category in the ABA data called school-funded positions. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Jobs where the law school itself is paying the graduate's salary. Fellowships the school invented. Postdoc gigs. Short-term placements the school created specifically to give their own graduates something to report. Now, the thing that should make you angry here is that these jobs count for the employment statistics. The ABA gives them equal weight. A Yale graduate on a Yale-funded fellowship counts exactly the same as a Yale graduate who landed a job at a real firm. And the rankings, US News, they use those numbers. So at Yale, last year, 5.1% of their graduating class was on a Yale-funded job. This year, it's 8.6%. So 1 in every 12 Yale law graduates is working a job that Yale itself is paying them to do. Stanford, 7.9%, that's 1 in 13. Cornell, last year, half of 1% of their class was in a Cornell funded job. This year, 3%, that's a 6x increase. 6 times higher in just 12 months. University of Texas went from 1.1%, 1.2% to 4.9%. That's 4 times higher. UCSF Law almost doubled. NYU is also up across the country. School-funded full-time, long-term bar-required jobs went up 14%, while total graduates dropped 7%. So real hiring slowed, and elite schools paid more of their own graduates out of pocket to fill the gap. And the rankings treat those jobs as identical to a law firm job. Yale's headline employment rate jumped more than 8 points this year, but a significant chunk of that is Yale writing its own graduates' checks. The school is literally inflating their own number by paying for it. And this is legal. It's disclosed in the data if you know where to look, but almost nobody does. Navigating that Excel spreadsheet on the ABA required disclosure site is not a cakewalk, but I did it so you don't have to. But I do recommend that you look into it because you're making a 6-figure bet here. And if you're picking a law school based on the headline employment rate, you're picking based on a number the richest schools can quietly rig, which is what Yale and Cornell and others are doing. Now, the schools whose numbers are a lot cleaner are the schools that can't afford to cook the books. It's kind of funny how that works. Now, one more piece of this release that nobody's going to cover. Class sizes are in free fall at some of the best law schools in the country. Baylor Law graduated 198 students last year, only 110 this year, down 44%. Boston College went from 341 to 213, down 38%. UNLV, down 35. Seton Hall, down 34. Berkeley, 408 to 283, down 31%. And Berkeley's a T14. University of Texas, down 25%. These are not fourth-tier schools. These are top-tier schools or flagship state schools or strong regional schools. And so there is something that broke in admissions a couple of years ago that we're only seeing now in the graduating classes. And so what does all this mean for you if you're applying to law school this cycle? The class graduating the year you do is going to be one of the smallest in a decade. And that could actually help you quite a bit. It means there's less competition when you hit the job market. But there is a way it could also hurt you. Schools shrinking this fast cut their faculty. They cut clinics, they cut career services. So the resources that they promise you at the admit weekend may not be there when you graduate. So before you commit to any law school, ask the admissions office one question. Ask them, what happened to your class size and what are you cutting? If they give you corporate marketing speak instead of numbers, you've got your answer. Now to zoom out for a second here, this week, the American Bar Association will release a press release saying that law school employment recovered. They're going to quote that 87.7% figure, but what actually happened again, 2,200 fewer legal jobs than last year. Unemployment actually went up, not down. And one of the most important HBCUs in America just sent a fifth of its class into unemployment. 5 schools collapsed by more than 8 points. Yale, Stanford, Cornell, Texas, all paying more of their own graduates to prop up their rankings, and class sizes are in free fall. The ABA is going to say everything's fine, but everything is not necessarily fine. So if you're applying to law school right now, look up the American Bar Association employment disclosure for every law school on your list. Look up the actual data. Look up the American Bar Association 509 employment summary. Read the unemployment number, the school-funded jobs number, and read the class size trend. And if you want my help navigating all this, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that tutoring with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. I've also put together a free easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. The link to download that free easy LSAT cheat sheet is unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet in my bio on TikTok and IG, below the video on YouTube as well. Great free resource I put together to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. I'm happy to answer any and all questions here in the chat coming in. Feel free to just drop them. I will answer as many as I can. Nala asks, I got a 148 on my LSAT with a 3.5 GPA and got into a law school that was top 5 in intellectual property. Awesome. That's a fantastic outcome. Congrats. That just goes to show, right, that it's not all about the general US News rankings. It's about the rankings in the specific area that you want to practice in. But I'm also curious to know, Nala, if you're willing to share, what kind of scholarship money did you get, if any? Because it's not only about getting in, it's also about getting scholarships, right? You don't want to pay sticker if you can avoid it. And so for the best outcomes, you don't want to just hit the medians of the law schools that you're targeting. You want to hit ideally above the 75th percentile to maximize the scholarship money you can get to get discounts on your tuition, because very few people are willing to pay sticker, and it's going to be harder to pay sticker when the cuts to the Grad Plus loans go into effect. They're capping how much you can borrow from the federal government for law school. That goes into effect in about 2.5 months or so. So if you don't want to have to take out private loans, if you want to cut the cut the tuition that you're paying to fill in that gap, you want to ideally get some more discounts on your tuition so that you're not paying out of pocket. S is asking, what kind of scholarship can you expect at a T14 with a 175 plus? So to be clear, there are 2 schools to my knowledge that do not offer merit aid. They are Harvard and Yale. They do not offer merit scholarship money on the basis of your numbers because, to be frank, Harvard and Yale don't have to offer scholarship money for merit. They get plenty of applicants without giving discounts. They only give need-based financial aid, but the other schools do offer merit aid. Now, a 175 plus, you're going to want to have that to get merit aid. The other missing piece of the puzzle is your GPA, right? It's the combination of the two. It's your LSAT score and your GPA together that determine what kind of merit aid you can get at any given law school. Now, know that for the top 14 law schools, their GPA medians are all around a 3.9. Their LSAT medians range from 170 to 174. And so if you want to max out the scholarships you can get, you want to be above a 3.9 on the GPA and above a 174 on the LSAT. And if you're below on the GPA, you want to be that much higher on the LSAT to compensate. And the extent to which you are higher on one or both numbers, the more scholarship money you can get. Not saying it's easy to get a full ride at a T14, of course, but if you could hypothetically get a 4.0 GPA and a 180 LSAT, you would be getting the highest possible scholarships that you could get. But I would blanket the T14. I would assume nothing. Apply to as many schools as possible, see what kind of offers you get back, and then negotiate them against each other politely, respectfully. But the best way to max your scholarships is to have alternatives. And that goes for any negotiation, of course. Just scanning through for other questions here. Honeybee's asking, hello, Steve. How can we get in touch with you for tutoring? You can DM me. You can call. You can email. My email is help@lsatunplugged.com. You can DM me on Instagram or TikTok. You can also book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link to book that is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That is an open offer, by the way, for anybody watching this now or later. During that free tutoring lesson, we look at where you're currently scoring on the LSAT, where your starting point is, what your goal LSAT score is, and what your time frame is. And so let's say you haven't even taken a cold practice test yet. You want a 175 by August. We'll map out a plan for that. If you've been studying for a while, want to get a 165 by June, we'll map out a plan for that. Of course, if you've got a shorter time frame, like 6-7 weeks for June, we'll take a more intensive boot camp style approach with live coaching 6-7 days a week because we want to max out your score. If you're taking it in August, September, October, or November, we'll take a more slow and steady approach. Give you a day off here and there because we don't want you to burn out, of course. But we always look at what is your current starting point, what's your goal score, when you take in the LSAT. Then we work backwards from your goal score back to today and see, okay, what would it take to get from here to there over that time frame? I divide LSAT prep into 3 major phases. You've got accuracy, pacing, and endurance. Accuracy is building a strong foundation and drilling questions by type, getting a better understanding of the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. Pacing is doing individual timed sections, working on your time allocation, how you distribute time over the course of the section so that you don't get bogged down, you don't get stuck, you keep moving forward. Ideally, you're finishing the section with time to spare. Then endurance, doing full-length timed practice tests, so that test day itself is ideally like just another practice run, and you've done it all before. Of course, every student has different time availability, different obligations. Some students are working full-time, some are in school, some have family obligations, and so we look at what else do you have going on, and how can we help you carve out time to study around your other obligations while maintaining quality of life, allowing time for sleep, diet, exercise, relaxation, so that you don't burn out, but you do make steady forward progress. And again, if you're looking for support, you can both book the free LSAT tutoring with me, unpluggedprep.com/start, Happy to talk you through it. If you're just getting started, looking for some quick pointers, I also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet. That is the exact playbook I used personally to hit my 175. The link to get that free LSAT cheat sheet is, again, below the video on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. Free download, no obligation, no strings attached, just quick tips, guidance, advice, strategies on both logical reasoning and reading comprehension to get you to your goal score and get you jump started. Other questions, feel free to keep them coming. The Big Cheese is asking, is Mississippi a great state to go to law school in? Is it a great state to practice in? I couldn't say. I honestly don't have a lot of personal experience with the state of Mississippi in particular. I would look at what are the typical salaries in that state. To my knowledge, Mississippi is not a big state for big law. And so if you're looking for like maxing out your income, I would think that better markets are New York, DC, LA, for example. But if you have family ties in the state, if you have connections in the state, that might be a better state to pursue. And a lot of law schools that would not have national placement do have strong regional placement. So it's all about the pipelines to individual firms in that state or in the major cities there. So I think rather than asking in general, is it a great state? Is it a great state for you? Would be my question. What connections do you have there? What network do you have there? Do you know people who can help you get a job? And then for any given law school, what are their typical employment outcomes and job placement stats? And bar passage rates as well, of course. I see the biggest is saying, I'm a junior in college. I got a 162 on my first diagnostic in December and just took the April LSAT. Cool, awesome. So you start off at a 162 about 4 months ago. I'm curious to know, what were your practice tests like in the lead up to April? If we look at the most recent 3 to 5 practice tests in the couple of weeks leading up to the April LSAT, that would give us the best possible indication of how you're likely to have done on the April LSAT. So I'm curious, what could you potentially have improved by over the course of 3 to 4 months? I mean, improving 10, 15 points in 3 to 4 months is very doable. I don't know what your goals were, how you studied, but that kind of increase is possible. If we project ahead for somebody starting now, 3 to 4 months from now, you've got the LSAT in August. So if you wanted to, if you're currently a junior in college, you're starting now, taking the LSAT in August, you could improve 10, 15 points, take the LSAT in August, apply in September when applications open. It's a pretty good time frame. If you can apply at the beginning of the cycle, there is more scholarship money available, easier to get in. For those who aren't aware, law school admissions is conducted on a rolling basis, meaning that law schools evaluate your application in the order in which they receive it. That being said, if you need more time to get your score up, it's better to apply later in the cycle with a higher score than earlier with a lower score. And so I would typically recommend against applying to law school in April to start law school only 3 to 4 months later. I would instead say you're probably better off waiting a year, applying in September to start law school 1 year later. And for anyone watching this now, starting their LSAT prep now, I mean, you've got plenty of time to take the LSAT this fall and apply this cycle. No reason to delay things a year. I see Jess is asking, do I have any chance to get into Fordham with a 180 LSAT and a 3.15 GPA? Yeah, you do. I mean, you can offset a lower GPA with a higher LSAT. Law schools love splitter applicants, and they actually weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA because undergraduate GPAs are subject to crazy inflation. Grades are inflated like wild, and so for that reason, law schools discount them heavily, and they place more emphasis and weight on your LSAT score. If you were to look at any given law school's admissions index, the formula where they weigh your LSAT relative to your GPA, they weigh your LSAT score more heavily. And a 180 LSAT can do a lot to address any concerns they might have about your academic ability. If you can get that 180 and show if it's a real number, then congrats, awesome. That's going to do a lot to open doors for you. I wouldn't over-index on any one particular law school in general. But if you're in New York or looking at law schools in New York, of course, I mean, I'm from New York myself. You've got a dozen plus schools in the area you could apply to. So don't get one-itis about Fordham in particular. With the 180, you might as well shoot your shot at NYU, Columbia, see what happens. And then you've also got plenty of others. You've got Cardozo, St. John's, Yeshiva. You've got a bunch of schools you could apply to and shoot your shot. I see you're saying you lost both of your parents during college, so you had some issues. Well, I'm sorry for your loss. And Thank you for trusting me enough to share your story there. That's certainly worth writing an addendum for additional context just to explain what happened that could address their concerns around the GPA front. And feel free to reach out if you want to talk through anything about admissions. I'm happy to help you out. I see the biggest is circling back saying practice tests were all above 163, aiming for 165. Plus, as I want to focus on my GPA. Okay, so biggest, you're saying that you start off at a 162 and your practice tests were all above 163. Are you saying that you only improved a couple points over the course of 3.5 months? Or 4 months even? Because that's a big question there. I mean, if you studied for 3-4 months and only improved a couple points, I would have expected you to improve more. So I wonder if you're leaving points on the table and there's some untapped potential you have not yet unlocked. Because to study for 3 to 4 months, I would expect you to improve at least 5-10 points minimum, no matter how you study. So if you did not get into the high 160s and beyond with the prep that you did, there's probably more work to be done. You might want to consider retaking in August or June and look at what could you do differently for a retake to get that score up. And I know you're saying you want to focus on your GPA. That makes sense. If you're still in school, you want to maintain a good GPA. But anybody should improve at least 5-10 points minimum just from getting familiar with the exam. And of course, it's going to vary based on where you're starting. Easier to improve more points when you start lower. In other words, easier to go from a 160 to a 165 than from a 170 to a 175, but starting at a 162, I would expect more. And so if you want to talk through what a retake plan could look like, if you're interested or you want to weigh the pros and cons of retaking, you can book the free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link to book it is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. You can also download the free easy LSAT cheat sheet through the link in my bio as well to help you jumpstart your prep. So you're saying your lowest practice test was a 163, highest was 176. I just do not do good with tests like these. That's a really big range though, 13 points, 163 to 176. I'm hoping that it trended higher over time, but I'd want to narrow the variability there because that is a pretty big range there. But again, feel free to reach out and we could talk through that together. Massive says, my roommate has a LSAT score 80%, but a high GPA. Does he have to retake it? I mean, you don't have to do anything, but I would retake it. Match a high GPA with a killer LSAT score. Why not? I mean, no reason to apply to law school as a reverse splitter with a high GPA and a low LSAT. If you got a low GPA, I understand that because it's hard to improve a low GPA. In other words, it's hard to redo all of undergrad. Like that's easier said than done. It's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of credits and such. But retaking the LSAT, it's offered 8 times a year. So there's always another one just around the corner. They've got it coming up in June, August, September, October, November. You could take any one of those LSATs. You could take all of them, aside from retake limits. But why not retake it in June or August and bring yourself up from the 80th percentile, which is actually fairly low, was that 80 percentile somewhere probably in the 160 range or so, like 160-ish, high 150s maybe, but to get a 170 would put you in the top 4% or so, radically better outcomes. You're saying he's retaken it 4 times. Okay, the question is, what could you do differently next time around? Is there some resource or type of support that you have not yet taken advantage of that you could take advantage of that would radically improve your odds? I mean, a lot of students are self-studying with LSAT for Dummies and AI-generated slot books on Amazon. Huge waste of time. A lot of these books are flawed. They contain mistakes. They're unrealistic LSAT questions. Trash, honestly. But if you can take a course or get some coaching and get some personal feedback on what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, avoid making the same mistakes again, there's a lot of untapped potential. And so send your roommate my way. Like I said, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now and later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. Link to get the free cheat sheets below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat, in my bio as well. No strings attached. Happy to share it for free to everybody watching this now or later. Give you tips on logical reasoning, reading comp, every section, every question type, start to finish. Not charging anything for it. Now, there was a commenter yesterday who was scoring in the 140s and 150s, got scores in that range like 3 or 4 times, then retook it a 4th or 5th time and got a 178. I don't know exactly what he did, but he changed his approach. We've had students improve 15, 20, 25 points by unlocking their potential, figuring out what they're finally getting wrong and why, and that can lead to radically better outcomes. And the good news is that law schools don't average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest score on your record, meaning there is no downside to retaking. If you do worse, no big deal. Your previous high score counts. If you retake and do better, congrats. Now you've got a higher score on your record. So to Daniel's question here, how do you feel about retakes? Should you take all 5 unless you get a 180? There's an argument for that. I mean, why not? All you've got to lose is the $250 per LSAT administration plus studying for the retakes. The benefit is you could save 6 figures on tuition. If you retake it and you get lucky, score on your high end, hit a 175 plus score, and now you've got a full ride, you've saved maybe $200,000 on your law school tuition. You retake it, hit that 175 plus, update your law school on what the latest LSAT score is. They give you more scholarship money. You get off a wait list. It changes the entire trajectory of the rest of your legal career just from sitting down for the LSAT for 2.5 hours. So to Ariana's question here, she's asking, I got waitlisted at UGA Law, but I don't know how likely it is I'll get off it by August. Well, imagine if you retook the LSAT in June or August. You emailed them and said, hey, I retook it. My score shot up 15, 20 points. I got a 175. What do you think? That could do a lot to get you off the wait list. Students retake the LSAT all the time for what's called scholarship reconsideration. Basically, the law school offered you not a lot of money. You retook the LSAT, got a higher score. You come back at them and say, hey, got a higher score. They triple their offer. Happens every single year because your LSAT score is worth money to them. Helps them raise their standing in the rankings with US News. And when they're higher in US News, that helps them attract more applicants for the future and also helps them attract more donations as well. So retaking the LSAT, getting more scholarship money, getting into better schools, it's the easiest money you'll ever make just from retaking the LSAT. And there is literally no downside. And your score is good for 5 years, by the way. And so let's say you don't like any of the offers you get this cycle. You could then reapply next fall with a new LSAT score, and that will also get you better outcomes. So it helps you both this cycle and the future as well. And by the way, the fact that law schools only take into consideration the highest score on your record and the fact that they don't average multiple scores, that contributes to the LSAT score inflation we're seeing where more folks are getting higher LSAT scores and the LSAT score medians are rising across the board. Every year they're getting higher and higher because folks are retaking more and more. And so you've got to do the same just to keep up. It's sad, but it's the truth. And it's not changing anytime soon. I see a question from Manveer asking, is finishing undergrad early a good idea? Could be. If you've got a great GPA and you want to go to law school sooner, why not? You save some money on your undergrad tuition. You've got 1 more year of your life as an attorney making attorney money. That sounds good to me. On the other hand, though, if your GPA is pretty low, it might be worth it to spend a bit more time in undergrad to raise your GPA and then apply with a stronger GPA. So in other words, take more classes to give yourself more time to demonstrate that upward trend. But I'd say it's based on where your GPA is right now. I see related is a 3.8 GPA and a 178 LSAT good? Yeah, that's very good. I mean, a 178 LSAT's fantastic. Top 1%. 3.8 GPA is pretty close to the T14 medians. So yeah, I'd say those are both pretty good. So yeah, I mean, those are good numbers to apply with in my book. Joffrey's asking, do you think studying as a paralegal is worth it? I've got a bachelor's in psychology and 4 associate's degree. I don't know that you need more undergrad degrees. Sounds like you have quite a few already. Law schools aren't going to care that much about having another degree, like a paralegal certification or whatever. I'd say at this point, you've got enough degrees. Let's focus on the LSAT. Have you taken that yet? That's going to be the biggest needle mover for you at this point. Law schools don't care that much about work experience. It's a soft factor, meaning it's not quantifiable, so it doesn't get the same weight. A lot of times folks will ask me a lot about work experience and internships and volunteer work and rec letters and application essays, and I'm like, you still haven't locked down your LSAT score. Everything else is a hypothetical until you have your LSAT. Let's get the LSAT first. Might take more time than you think, but that's going to be the biggest way we can improve your odds of admission. Everything else is secondary. I see Pamela's asking, what are your thoughts on using score preview? I've heard schools do look at number of attempts. So score preview and number of attempts are two separate things. Score preview means you get to see your LSAT score before deciding whether to cancel your LSAT score. But law schools will still see that you took the LSAT. They'll either see a number out of 180 or they'll see that you canceled. Either way, they're going to know that you took the LSAT. But in my view, score preview is basically just a cash grab on LSAT's part because a low score versus a cancellation, neither one really matters. If your score is canceled, they're going to assume the LSAT probably didn't go very well because if it had gone well, you wouldn't have canceled. But if it's a low score, they have no incentive to care because they only take into consideration the highest score on your record. So if score preview makes you feel better, you don't mind giving LSAC some money, go ahead, do it for peace of mind, might be worth it. But my thought is take the LSAT when you're scoring within spitting distance of your goal. If you're not scoring close to your goal, might as well just push it back until you're ready, given that there is a retake limit. And if you want to talk through strategizing to get you to your goal score, you could book the free LSAT tutoring with me. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I'm also offering a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your prep. It has all the strategies I wish I had back when I was studying for the LSAT, helped me get my 175. Totally free, no strings attached, covering everything in logical reasoning and reading comprehension. The link to get the cheat sheet is unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. Link is below the video, in my bio as well on TikTok and IG. Now, Arsh is asking, about to begin studying for the LSAT for the first time. How do I start studying and practicing? Well, the first step you could take would be to take a cold diagnostic on the LSAC Law Hub website. You get 4 practice tests on there for free. You get the others with the Law Hub Advantage subscription. Well worth it, by the way. Don't over-index on your cold diagnostic, though. The results are often discouraging. It just tells you what you already know, which is that you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course you can over time. Just use it as a benchmark from which to measure your later future progress. In other words, your starting score might be low. Know that you can get it to be a lot higher over time with the right strategies. The free LSAT cheat sheet I mentioned, unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet, is a great starting point. We cover every LSAT section, every LSAT question type, both logical reasoning and reading comprehension as well. Flaw patterns, validity, question types, reading comprehension, structure, note-taking, question types there, dual passages, timing and test day. A lot of different resources in there. Happy to talk you through them on a tutoring lesson free call, but the PDF cheat sheet is totally free. You can grab it right now. Link's in my bio. Link is below the video as well. And if you want to talk through it more, of course, you can book the free tutoring lesson with me. What we do during those free tutoring lessons is we look at where you're at right now, what your goal score is, and we map out a plan to get you from your current score to your goal on your time frame. I use the LASER approach to LSAT prep in my coaching. LASER is an acronym standing for Learning, Accuracy, Sections, Exams, and Review. It's the foundation of our LSAT study plans. L is for learning, building a strong foundation in the different LSAT sections, the different LSAT question types. A is for accuracy, drilling questions by type to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. S is for individual sections, working on pacing and time management. E is for exams and endurance, doing full-length timed practice tests to better simulate test day. And R is for review, using the Socratic review method. Because if you're not learning from your mistakes, you're just going to repeat them. The LSAT uses the same methods of reasoning, the same tricks and traps over and over and over again. And students' scores stay low because they'll look at the answer key, they'll say to themselves, oh, I get it. How could I have been so dumb? Then they just do the same thing again. And so part of what we do in the coaching is we give you a bit more accountability to slow it down, make sure you thoroughly understand what you're getting wrong, why you're getting it wrong, drill down to the root cause in your process to course correct for the future. Spat is asking, is having civil litigation and meeting with clients good experience since I'm still just a kid? So you're still just a kid. I mean, define kid. Then you're saying that you've had civil litigation. You mean that you sued somebody or they sued you? But you're meeting with clients. Are you interning at a law firm? Are you in college? I want to get a little bit more context here. Long story short, I mean, if you can tell the story of your experience in an application essay, that's going to help. In other words, law schools like it when applicants have some real-world exposure to the practice of law, meaning that your understanding of law is beyond what you'll see in Suits or other pop culture portrayals of the law. I mean, Better Call Saul is not real life. And law schools want to know that you do have that real-world exposure if you do. So I see you're saying as a follow-up, assist attorney with discovery and go to a client's house to do contracts. That's great. Yeah, definitely talk about that in your application essays. Law schools are going to like to see that. That's good stuff. Ank is asking, do law admissions understand that some undergrad schools have grade inflation versus deflation? Oh yeah, I mean, they're well aware of it. The problem though is that the American Bar Association and the US News rankings don't distinguish between schools with inflation versus deflation, majors with inflation, grade inflation versus majors with grade deflation. In other words, sociology, lots of grade inflation. Engineering, lots of grade deflation, right? So that means that the same person is going to get a much higher GPA majoring in sociology than majoring in engineering, right? But for law school admissions purposes, the GPAs are treated the same. And so the prudent thing to do would be to major in sociology, get the higher GPA. You'll have better admissions odds with that. Not fair, of course, but that's just how it is. So for that reason, what a lot of law schools do is they just discount GPA relative to LSAT, meaning they say, you know what, the GPA is not that useful a metric. We're going to place more weight on your LSAT score because at least the LSAT score is a constant for everybody. In other words, everybody takes the same LSAT. No matter what your major, your age, your background, you're taking the same LSAT exam with logical reasoning and reading comp. And so for that reason, they're going to focus more on that metric. They do still consider GPA, which isn't right. I think they should just do away with GPA entirely because it's such a flawed metric, but it does still get some weight. And so if your GPA is low, it's unfortunate, but know that you can offset a lower GPA with a higher LSAT score. Spat is asking, does going to the gym help build mental discipline in a way? Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. It also just helps with your brain functioning, your energy. I mean, if you want to be operating at 110%, I would argue that sleep, diet, exercise, relaxation all plays a role in helping you perform at your best. I do recommend carving out some time in your prep for exercise and getting outdoors every single day. Eating well also plays a big role. So ideally, you're able to maintain quality of life during your LSAT prep and carve out time for all of the above. I mean, that's one thing we do for our students when we create an LSAT study plan for you is we look at, okay, well, how can we balance your obligations like work, school, family, and LSAT prep, and still leave time for quality of life. All of it plays a role. And we can help with that, by the way. If you want to book the free tutoring with me, we could talk through what your LSAT prep plan could look like to take all of that into account. Noodles is saying, I've done the LSAT 4 times, paid for tutors, still have the same score, which is 152. The question is, what was missing from your prep before? I mean, we got to change the variables to change the equation. Clearly, something you've been doing in the past has not been working. Not all prep is equally good. Not all LSAT prep is equally high quality. In other words, it's not a commodity. Just because one tutor didn't work for you doesn't mean that another tutor won't work. What were the credentials of the tutor? What was their experience? Were they creating for you a study plan? Were they giving you guidance on what to do outside of the sessions? Were they explaining questions the way a book would or the way a video would, or were they actually looking at your thought process, helping you figure out what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, getting down to the root cause like we do in our coaching? And so if you want to talk through this personally in more depth, I'm happy to help you out. You can book the free tutoring with me. We could talk through it more. Katie's asking, how do schools generally look at students without a GPA? My undergrad program didn't have any grades. I would look at how LSAC is going to calculate your GPA. I would reach out to LSAC to ask about that. But I can speak about it in a different context, which is international students. Students who went to undergrad outside the US, or North America at least, they're not looking at their transcript because they don't really know how to evaluate it. And so they just make it a big question mark or a big not applicable, and they devote all that piece of the pie that would have been GPA, they give all that weight to the LSAT instead. So the LSAT gets like double attention or more for that reason. And so when you have no usable GPA, that makes your LSAT score that much more important because it becomes the only quantifiable factor or metric they can use to evaluate your academic readiness. And they, in a way, they have to give the LSAT good weight because that is the strongest predictor of your law school grades, bar passage rates, which then relate to employment outcomes. And law schools want their outcomes to be good. They don't want to get in trouble with the American Bar Association. They don't want to drop in the US News rankings. And so they want to admit people who are going to do well in law school and pass the bar. And so when you have no GPA they can look at as a predictor or a metric, your LSAT score becomes relatively more important. Juan Carlos says, 36 years old, graduated with honors in psychology and work in technology. My experience is very diverse. Will this hinder or help me in admissions? Definitely help. I mean, law schools like people with unique backgrounds, unique life experience, makes for more interesting classroom discussions, and a richer resume also makes you more employable upon graduation. So they like seeing that as well. But more important than your background and your experience is the numbers. What's your LSAT? What's your GPA? The longer you've been out of undergrad, the less your GPA matters, the more weight they give to your work experience, to your LSAT score, because who you were 10, 15, 20 years ago is not who you are today. You've grown, you've changed, you've matured, presumably. And so for that reason, they're not going to give as much weight to your GPA. Your LSAT score becomes the more recent, more indicative metric of how you are likely to do in law school. And so they give that more weight in admissions. But feel free to reach out and we could talk through this more. Star is asking, after years of self-studying, I finally got up to 153. Do you think tutoring will help for 160 plus? So you spent years self-studying. And that was only on your own, no support at all. I mean, there's probably a lot of untapped potential. And so I would think that tutoring would help here. I mean, it sounds like you've spent a lot of time on your own absorbing theory and background and foundation, but you have not translated that into concrete results that manifest in a higher score, right? So there is a lot of room for improvement. And usually we find that with even just one or two tutoring sessions, if we can help you correct a misconception about a particular question type, help you find a more efficient approach, there's usually a pretty quick score boost and a lot of low-hanging fruit. So yes, I would think that tutoring could help. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already, book the free tutoring with me. The link to book it is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube. pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. Again, that's an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. And if you haven't already, you can also download the free Easy LSAT cheat sheet, linked in my bio as well, unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. We're covering both logical reasoning and reading comprehension in depth. It's a solid overview of the LSAT, giving you a strong foundation. Every section, every question type, totally free, no strings attached. Happy to share it with the world to help you jumpstart your prep. I'm scanning through for other questions. Feel free to keep them coming. Life of Boo is asking, I'm 50, want to take the LSAT next year. Am I too old? No, definitely not. We work with a lot of so-called non-traditional older applicants who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s, believe it or not. And you're still capable of taking the LSAT, getting a top score. If it's been a while since you were in undergrad or doing anything academic in nature, you might feel a little bit rusty at first, but your brain still works. You're still capable of doing this. Just maybe give it a little bit more time, but you can conquer the LSAT just the same. And I'm happy to help you out if you want to book the free tutoring with me. Law schools also like folks with work experience and life experience. So they're not going to penalize you for that. Now, somewhat related, Nate's asking about taking a gap year before applying to law school from college. Yeah, I do think a gap year is a pretty good idea for a couple of reasons. One is that a gap year gives you more time to study for the LSAT, get a higher score, also gives you more time to save up for law school, get some money in the bank, get some work experience, and also explore whether law school is truly what you want to do. Rather than rushing into law school just for lack of a better option, you can intern as an attorney, as a paralegal with an attorney, get more of a concrete sense of what lawyers actually do. And law schools do like seeing work experience, so that can help. It's not a requirement, but it's definitely a nice to have. And again, folks, for those just joining, if you're looking for help or support, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best. Take care. Thanks for joining.